Rev up your engines!
KR500 says, Scotty, are there any years of Corollas I should stay away from? Well, yeah, as far as I'm concerned, the only thing that you'd stay away from is when they came back with the Toyota Matrix. Originally, the Toyota Matrix was called Toyota Corolla Matrix. Then they called them Matrices, then they stopped making them. Well, they came back last year, the year before, with Toyota Corolla Hatchback. Well, the Toyota Corolla Hatchback is really a Matrix. And you don't want to buy one of those that has a CVT transmission in it because they had problems. They had to recall them. So that you wouldn't want to buy. But other than that, no, the regular ones. My son recently bought a brand new Toyota Corolla with the CVT, just the regular one, not the hatchback, and he loves it. He drives hard. It's got good acceleration. He says he gets better gas mileage on the highway than even the ratings were. So, yeah, I got to say, they're doing it pretty good. But just stay away from the Toyota Corolla hatchback because they had problems with those. 202 Ray says, late 90s and early 2000 Nissan Sentras, are they a good buy? Would a 99 surpass the 2004 since they're different generations? Yeah, no, that is true. They used to make great cars, Nissan. Before that, they were called Datsun. They made even better cars that could run forever. And some of them were little bitty runabouts, didn't have much power, but they could run forever. Of course, when Renault took over around 2000, the quality started to go downhill. But of course, the problem is, if you're talking about buying an old vehicle like that, a 99, that is a 21-year-old vehicle. They're old vehicles. Generally, just from age, they're going to be worn quite a bit. If you're mechanically inclined, you get one that's got lower mileage, you don't mind fixing stuff, go right ahead. Don't do like some of my customers mistakenly do, and they'll buy a 90s car as an everyday driver and think they can just get in and drive it. And I'd say, no, that's a weekend toy for you. And then if you want to really fix it all up, then maybe you could be a daily driver for a while. But they're just so old, things are just going to wear out from friction. Get old enough, friction's going to destroy any machine. So you don't want to buy a really old one for a daily driver in any kind of situation. I've even had customers buy them that had 20,000 miles and they were 30 years old and they were an estate sale from an old person. And generally, even those started to fall apart because they're so old. All the rubber and all the plastic parts started cracking and breaking. And it can be a pain replacing them. Let's say the rear main seal of the engine goes out and it's pouring oil out of the engine on the back. You got to pull the transmission of the engine out to replace it. Yeah, it's only a $20 part, but you're going to spend, $800 labor. Realize that on really old cars. Not a great thing for everyday drivers. Dimitri's 1990 says, Scotty, I wonder if Fiat or Bart's good cars. A friend of mine has one with 50,000 miles and it runs great. Not really. You're in a commercial with Charlie Sheen's riding the Abarth inside his mansion, partying along. I guess they use Charlie because, hey, they figured that, he's got a big following, and he's known for being Mr. Drug Use. And I guess they figured maybe there's enough people doing enough drugs that they won't think logically and they'll buy one of these things. They had an Alfa Romeo engine instead of a Fiat engine, so they're a little bit more powerful, but they're still a little bitty rust bucket Fiat 500. You can get a used one pretty cheap. They have no resale value, and they're pulling the Fiat 500s out of the United States at the end of this year anyway, so you could get one cheap if you wanted a little knock-around toy. But they aren't that good cars. They don't hold up over time. The one advantage of those, the Abarths come with the standard transmission. So you don't have to worry about the crappy Fiat automatic transmission breaking down, which were junk, because the standards at least are decent. You've got that going for it, but still, it's a Fiat 500, and they're pretty junky cars. Street 31563 says, Scotty, on my 2012 Mazda 3 Skyactiv, I've been having trouble filling it up. It keeps kicking the pump off. On those things, it's almost always a bad evap canister vent valve. When you put gas in your car, the gas fills up empty space. Well, the empty space isn't empty. There's air in there. And so that air's got to go somewhere. And what happens is it's got to go through the evap canister vent valve. And if that's not working right, it's shut or it's plugged up. Believe it or not, and I didn't believe this until I read it, and it is the truth. There are certain spiders that they're naturally attracted to the smell that gasoline gives off. And they can make little nests and webs on where the vent valves vents out the little tube. And that can get clogged up too. Not common, but it does happen. But if that vent isn't venting, then it'll come back out where your nozzle is. Well, the nozzle measures that stuff, and when the pressure comes back up, it shuts itself off. So you got a problem with your vent system somewhere, and a lot of times it's the evap canister vent valve. That would be the first thing that I advise you to check out on that Mazda. Scotty Kilmer fan, 1955 says, Scotty, I know you say only get all-wheel drive if you really need it. In your opinion, where would I need to live to need it? Well, a lot of it depends on where you live and how good of a driver you are. There isn't always a need for all-wheel drive. But if you live in a mountainous area where it does snow a lot or rain a lot, you're going to get a lot better control with all-wheel drive, especially when you're cornering and stuff like that. In that case, it's more of a safety issue because, yeah, the all-wheel drive certainly works better in the snow, but it also does in the rain. And it's not just going in a straight line driving through snow, it's cornering. Even if there's just a little bit of snow, when you're cornering and you have four wheels that are driving the vehicle, and all the modern cars, it's all computer controlled, it's going to control wheel slippage a lot better. Now, yeah, you're going to pay a lot more money for it. You're going to get worse gas mileage. Your repairs are going to be more expensive. You feel that you're not, extremely competent with driving in the snow, especially, let's say you grew up in Alabama and then you moved to Pennsylvania. Okay, you probably don't know how to drive in the snow. Might not be a bad idea to get an all-wheel drive vehicle then. Alex19 says, Scotty, I got a question. My van sometimes won't start. The dashboard lights turn on when I put the key on, but all I hear is a click. Help. There's a few things that can do it, but the most simple thing is have the battery load tested. Have it tested. Now, let's say you don't feel like taking the battery out and taking it to them, getting it tested, and bring it back. Try to jump start the car. If the car jump starts, then odds are it is the battery, and you can just drive it there. Have them load test the battery and buy a battery if you need one. Now, if it's not the battery, generally it's the starter. When starters wear out, they'll often just go click because the solenoid clicks the gear engaged, but then it can't spin the engine because the motor doesn't have enough power to spin the engine of the car. It takes a lot of energy for one of those little electric starter motors to turn an engine. You could also have a locked up engine. If that's locked up, nothing's going to start it. Big long extension bar in the socket, put it on the crank of the engine and try to turn the engine by hand. If you can't, the engine's locked up, forget it. And the other thing, of course, is any loose battery terminal, any connector that's loose. If it's loose, it won't conduct the electricity, right? So you got an old worn out battery terminal or connectors that aren't bolted on tight, they can do that too. But normally it's the battery or the starter, which are easy enough to test. Aiden Vance says, is the E83 BMW X3 a reliable car? They seem to be going for cheap with relatively low mileage. Well, you kind of just answered your question yourself. They're pretty cheap with relatively low mileage because they're money pits. And anybody who's owned one knows that. Anybody who has a friend that has owned one in the past, if the friend was honest with them, will know that they're endless money pits. That's why they go for cheaper prices. I was reading something the other day in Canada, like over 80% of the BMWs, they aren't even buying them. They just lease them. Then they get rid of them when they're off lease. They're smarter there. They don't put their heavy-duty money into the vehicle and then lose most of it if they sell it when it's 3 or 4 years old. They just are endless money pits. Don't buy one of those things. Value your money. Get yourself a Toyota, an Acura, a Lexus SUV. Don't buy one of those BMW money pits if you value your money. That's just the way that it goes. I've had customers with them and not a single one had one more than 5 or 6 years and didn't start to have serious problems with the stupid things. Funes says, does Royal Purple Oil clean valves? Which oil has the best cleaning properties? None of them clean valves. The valves get dirty where the valve goes into the head, where the gasoline comes in on the intake. Cleaner in the gasoline is what keeps those clean. The engine oil, it cleans the bearings, the cams, the timing chains, all that stuff. They all work pretty well. I mean, I've been sold for years on Castrol oil because I've used it my whole life, and I never have engine problems, so I stick to what I know. But most modern oils, they're perfectly good for cleaning things out and keeping the oil in suspension, all the dirt's in suspension oil. That's why they're called detergent oils. Ages ago, they didn't have detergent oils, and all the dirt and sludge would go on the bottom and clog up engine. But a long time ago, they came up with what the detergent does. It keeps the dirt in suspension in the oil instead of falling out and making gunk and clogging everything up. So when you change your oil, you're changing all the dirt out with it. You change your oil frequently. And they all do that well, but none of them clean valves. The only thing that cleans valves is the detergent additives in the gasoline itself. And if you have a GDI engine, that doesn't even work because then there's no fuel going over the intake valves and they will clog up on some design. If you got a normal car with fuel injection with injectors on the intake, no, because then they spray the gasoline over the intake valves and that cleans them from getting carbon, because gasoline's actually a very good solvent. As nutty as it sounds, when I was a kid, people used to clean their tires in gasoline out in their garage to get stains out. So it is a very good solvent, but it's got to get on the valves to clean them. If it's being sprayed directly in the engine, they don't. That's why GDI engines have a tendency of carboning up. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.